So I'll record this presentation. Feel free to keep your camera off or keep it on. So I will get started here. I prepared a little presentation for all of us just to go through. And inshallah, you guys are doing well. This presentation is not meant to obviously as a career advice, but it's kind of a cultivation of my experience over the past 11 years of working professionally and interviewing for previous companies. And what I find most of the time is that you have a lot of great talent, and some people just don't do well during the interview, which is a major step for you to get a position or a job. So first things first, let's get started. Just an intro on myself. Most of you already know me. I do work as a software developer, previously for Beaumont Health, and before that for Urban Science and CompuWare. And I actually, last Friday was my last day at Beaumont, and I'm joining a new team or a new company called Dev10, a subsidiary of Genesis 10, a consulting company to measure Fortune 100 companies. And I'll be actually doing teaching, something that is of my passion. As you already know, I'm on the school board for the city of Dearborn schools, public schools, and I'm very interested in pursuing that further. So this company came to be about, and I took the position and did well in the interview, and alhamdulillah received the offer. So I welcome you to ask me any questions that you have during this webinar. Don't just wait until I ask you to ask me questions. So I want this to be, inshallah, as interactive as possible. So let's get started. So both of this presentation is out of two books that I've read before. One is Mastering the Job Interview by Lavi Morgellon, and it's a really nice book. It discusses a lot of the nuances that interviewees most of the time fall into. And the other book, which I have not read, but I read the Cliff Notes on Amazon, it's called Your Guide to Successful Business Interviews. And this is also another great book that I read the Cliff Notes on. So, but I have not read this book. So just to give you a definition on what is an interview, obviously it's a two-way exchange, a conversation in which two participants have some goals. The interviewer wants to determine, can the candidate do the job? Will the candidate fit in? Is this the best candidate for the position? Now, the interviewee, you on the other side, you're thinking, is this the best job? How would I be able to convince the other person that I'm the best person? And do I believe I will fit in that culture? It's very important to ask yourselves those questions as you are, once you finish your interview. Make sure that you ask yourself, is this a job that I really want to take? Is this something that I'm really interested in, before even thinking if there's an offer or not? So most of the time, obviously, interviews at different companies vary. So some companies, especially if you're in a technical field, they do have what they call a technical interview, a behavioral interview, and an HR interview. And sometimes they mix them together. Sometimes they only have a technical interview. Sometimes they only have a behavioral interview. I think a company that does not do behavioral interviews, they're doing themselves a disservice, because it's very, very crucial that they do technical interviews to make sure that the person is technically sound and that they can deliver on things. And at the same time that, hey, this is the person that we want as far as the talent. So it's very important that when you are doing all of these interviews, that you know exactly, and you prepare for each one. So a behavioral interview is definitely the most important one out of the three. They'll be asking you questions of how you did things in the past. And most of the time, they're what they call them situational questions. So they begin with like, tell me about a time, and then they tell you a situation, and they're expecting you to talk about the situation, explain it, the problem, you state the problem, then you state the solution, or perhaps sometimes multiple solutions, how you came to that solution. And then what you want to spend more of the time is the outcome. And also, what did you learn from this outcome, and how are you going to take it further? So this is very, very important because General Motors, use what they call STAR, and now they added an L, STAR method, to ask you those questions. And the interviewers, they already have questions for you prepared to ask you those questions. So it's okay if you have some prepared answers. Actually, you should be doing that. That's part of, mastering your interview, is that you have some of those questions already answered, and you type them or you write them, whatever is good for you, and that you have them prepared. So when they ask you the question, you just nail it down right away. You don't even, start to think, and if they stump you with a question that you never prepared for, or you don't have an answer for, it's okay to take your time and to say, can I have a minute to think about this, or a few seconds, so you can get things in your head. Most of the time when I've mentored some folks who have taken interviews, they do get new questions, but they're already knowing how to pivot, how to take an answer, and how to think quickly, because you got to think in those 10, 15 seconds, or even when they're asking the question, you're already formulating an answer in your head to answer them. But make sure that you tell them the situation, the problem, the behavior, what you have done, and the outcome. So one of the questions that I received at GM interview was, tell us about a time where you had a difficult coworker who was working with you on a team and was not producing well. So I was thinking, going through my head, through my history of my employment, where I've had that difficult coworker. And alhamdulillah, it came to my head, one person at Urban Science who was actually in another office in Europe, who was very difficult even to understand their code or what they do. So what I did on my end is I explained that, I after talking with this coworker multiple times, we found that we have a common interest beyond work, which is soccer. So that was something that, we got to know each other more on a personal level. And then we started talking about work later, right? Hey, can you explain this piece of code that you just wrote? Hey, is it possible if we can look at the standards that we're looking at? So explaining that real life situations is very key, is very important. And then what you have done. So for example, going back to the example that I mentioned, we were able to create a personal bond. And right after that, we were able to exchange, good feedback to each other about writing code, about writing comments in the code and explaining things, writing proper documentation, and then you say the benefit, the productivity of our team increased, and we were able to have a better relationship with each other through those personal connections. Now, most of the time when they ask you these questions, they're interested in knowing a personal experience that you've had. Now, say in those 15 seconds, I could not think of anything. Like there is nothing that is remotely close to what they're asking. Then you say, well, I've never, you come clean, you come very honest with them. And you can say, I've never came across this situation before, but here is what I would do if this were to happen. So if they ask you, have you ever worked on 2 projects at the same time and felt like you will not be able to deliver one project, right, on time, what would you do? So if I have not done that in the past, I will tell them right away that I have not. But those are the things, if I were to be in this situation, those are the things that I'm going to do. Okay, so this is mostly for interviewers, people who are asking questions, but I made this slide just for you to know your rights as well as an interviewee. So some questions, they're obviously in the US, that they absolutely cannot ask you as an interviewer. And if they have, then you would have to report them to their employer or to their, to whomever you're doing. They could even get into, labor issues, but they cannot ask you about your race. They cannot ask you about your religion. They cannot ask you about your personal appearance. They could definitely talk to you about dress code policy. They cannot ask you about your national origin. Even citizenship, they cannot ask you if you are a naturalized or native-born citizen. They can actually ask you if you're a US citizen or not. And I think the question that they have is, are you eligible to work in the US? They also cannot ask you about financial information. So just to keep in mind, if you are ever in those situations where they ask you these type of questions, that's definitely a no-no, and they should not be doing that, and they could be in legal issues. So base questions, most of the time they will ask you about your teamwork skills. Are you a team player? Are you a person who's willing to lend a hand? Are you a person that is easy to work with? And they ask you those questions through situational questionnaires. So they ask you, for example, what in the past, what have you done to increase your team productivity? And they're looking for your teamwork skills. They're looking for somebody who is willing to be part of the team and helping others, and also learning from others. What can you do to advance this team by also doing your own part and doing it well? They're also obviously, as engineers, they're asking you about problem solving. But most importantly, when I used to be at Beaumont and I used to interview a lot of developers who are coming in, junior developers, my first question is like, I show them a bug in our application, and I tell them, this page is loading slow, or I have this problem on the front end, which is having this issue. What are the steps you are going to do to resolve this issue? Now, this is kind of mixed behavior / technical. So I'm expecting the interviewee to tell me, first if they know their troubleshooting skills, to know the logging systems that, that possibly that they could use, the front end logging, the back end logging, debugging at the end, or even looking at system logs to resolve this issue. I'm also expecting this person to tell me what they did to correct this problem, and also to learn from it. Like in the future, did you document this issue? Right. I found this issue, this was a problem, this was documented, and this is a solution. Because most of the time, other people may run into the same problem. So that's for the problem solving. The other thing is initiative and leadership. And most of the questions are obviously looking into, are you a person who's going to take charge? Who's going to see a situation and not just be say, oh, this is not my specialty, this is not my area, but it's in your team's hand or in your team realm, and you have to solve it. They also look for interpersonal skills. Are you outgoing? Are you a person who is willing to talk to other team members about your experiences? That you're not just a technical person and you're closed to yourself. And many are looking into, can you work under pressure? Can you handle stress? Can you take challenges to the next level? So those are many common questions. They are along these situations. And I think I do have a slide about some questions that they do have. So recently interviewed at Facebook. Was very interesting of how they interview. So the first thing that they do is they actually don't have you interview for a certain team. So they pick randomly some either developers or SDMs or what are they called? Software developer managers who will interview you. And I believe they do have certain questions that they do ask you. There is an what they call it behavioral interview, and then there is a technical interview. As far as the behavioral interview, they run you through a lot of situations similar to the GM style. Tell me about a situation, tell me about a situation. And bear in mind, these folks are not going to be your managers. They're not going to be even working with you most of the time. They're just trying to assess your competency level, your skills, and then you have a technical interview. In my technical interview, I had one guy who seems like he's British or Scottish. He had like a foreign accent, a European accent. And it was kind of hard to understand him in the beginning. So I had to really like put my headphones on. And the first question, I was really stumped because it was probability. And I hated that subject, statistics, in college. And it was like, come on, man, تابعني لهنا. But I managed to, just write pseudo code for that. I did not really write compiled code. So I just explained to him what I would do. I was kind of stumped at the problem. And the other question was really kind of somewhat easy, medium easy. It was finding the critical path in a binary tree. So that was kind of easy, going back to C++ or CIS 350 at U of M, of doing those traversing of graphs and finding the critical path. And then coding live, obviously, in Java or whatever the code that you would want to code in. Now, Facebook, they call themselves language agnostic. So they don't really care what language you code in, as long as you present the problem. And even you don't really have to solve the problem during the questionnaire. But at least you need to, write some pseudo code to tell them how you're going to solve the problem. Facebook, then they have a portal of a lot of their employees who sign up to that. You can actually book a meeting with them and talk to them for like 20 minutes or a half hour, one-on-one. This is not a interview. It's not part of the interview. It's on your own to do this. And the great thing about it is that you can actually ask them questions about their interview experience. And I got really shocked when I asked one guy who was Muslim, and I asked him, what was your experience like? How did you prepare for it? Because honestly, I was really busy preparing also for Dev 10 interview. And he told me he stayed 3 months prepping, doing like 3 or 4 hours a day of LeetCode.com is a good website, and also doing a lot of exercises, technical exercises that he got and other websites. So that's, I was really shocked, here I am, I did 2, and Munder can attest to this. I did like probably 6 hours or 7 hours of prep. So I wasn't really prepared, sarahatan, for Facebook, and I should have if I was really serious. But at the same time, I wasn't really too excited because what I've heard about the culture. And that's what I actually asked the guys there, but it seems like it depends on where you land. So the folks who are at Facebook, they're more relaxed. But if you're on WhatsApp or Instagram, then they really work you, and it's really intense. The work culture there obviously is so different than other companies. The pay is really, really good. What I'm hearing is like, a senior software developer would make 180. That's aside from their stocks and their perks that they give you, and you work remote now. They have a lot of positions that are remote. So that was my Facebook experience. Any questions about Facebook or what I have explained so far? Are you guys finding this good? Give me feedback.
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So some of the behavioral questions that they may ask you, for example, describe a situation where you disagreed with a supervisor. That's kind of sometimes a given for me, because I've done that quite a few. They tell you also where you had a conflict at work. What did you do to resolve it? Tell us about a situation where you had to solve a difficult problem. And then this is where they're looking for creativity. Describe a project or idea, not necessarily your own, that you implemented primarily because of your efforts. And then do you feel you work well under pressure? If so, describe a time when you have done so. Give us an example where you motivated others. Tell us about a time where you had to delegate tasks during a project. Give us an example where you showed initiative and took the lead, and then a time where you missed an obvious solution to a problem and your proudest professional accomplishment. Don't be afraid to admit mistakes in an interview. If they ask you, most of the toughest questions that I've answered, or actually, other people do, is the question about your weaknesses. What are your weaknesses? Be like, don't say I don't have any weaknesses, because that's definitely not a good answer. So make sure that you have those answers ready. And again, you can expect whatever questions, and you're ready to pivot. Now General Motors, I interviewed twice, actually, back in 2017, one interview, and I came very close. And the second interview, it was kind of half complete, because I didn't even bother to move on to the next level, because I already received an offer. And the first time when I interviewed, it was actually for a software developer position. And they did ask a lot of questions that are pertaining to their method now, what they call the STARL method. So S, STAR stands for situation, T is for tasks, and A for action, and then R is for result. And L, this is something new that they introduced, which is learned. So situation, describe the situation. What were the tasks that you did and the actionable items that you did? And then the result, what was the end result of the actions based on the problem and the situation? And then the L now, what lessons did you learn for the next problem or for the future? So they're always in that realm. Now they even introduced something called high view interviews, where they make you record those questions prior to them scheduling an interview. And after that, they have you scheduled an interview with an engineer or somebody who is a software engineering manager. Now, this is obviously definitely in software, it could apply to everybody else. But it seems like they want to weed out a lot of the candidates. So they make you record your answers to 2 situational questions. And you can actually re-record them. You have an opportunity, if you like screw up the first time, you can redo it again and then record yourself again. And then you submit, it automatically submits those videos to the hiring or to the recruiter and the managers. and the managers look at those your answers, and then if they like what you had to say, then they ask for a technical interview. So that was kind of the experience with GM. So most of the time, sometimes you may, the first things that recruiters do is a phone interview before you get into the next level. And in those phone interviews, the recruiters want to weed out candidates, want to make sure that they get somebody who is matching what they're looking for. And at the same time, they're looking at somebody who is worthwhile to interview. So make sure that, you have the best impression over the phone, that you're in a very quiet environment, that you take your time in answering questions, that you ask them to repeat a question, even if you understood what the question means, but you want to take your time to answer the question. So ask them again, be like, can you please repeat your question? Or I'm sorry, I did not hear that. Can you please repeat it again? So you would have more time to kind of cultivate or accumulate an answer and answer it in the best way possible. So that comes to a conclusion of my presentation. I hope that, you guys have found this very helpful. Inshallah, I don't know if any of you are doing job hunting, but, this is the best time to actually start looking around. I also wanted to show you something to focus on, definitely, is even if you're doing a virtual interview, is your body language, your posture, your gestures, your facial expression. Now in person, they're definitely looking into this. They have a full view. Online, they just have this view. So make sure that you are aware of the company that you're interviewing for, their culture, their dress code. So for example, at Facebook, I actually wore like a regular polo shirt because that's actually what they wear. And the interviewer was doing the same thing. GM, I was actually it was more formal. I was wearing more of a business casual. For a DEF-10, I was actually dressed in a suit. So make sure that you kind of find out what their dress policy is prior to that. Maybe ask a person who already works there, and then you prepare for that way. If it is in person, definitely I would say it's better to be overdressed than underdressing. So, a business casual or business, suit is better to go to the interview like that. So most of the time, a lot of interviewers, they're looking into this, is non-verbal communication. You're already sending a message of how do you carry yourself by the way that you dress, by the way that you carry yourself, and the eye contact. Are you giving them eye contact? I'm a person who actually struggles with this. So I struggle with this all of the time. Is when I'm speaking, I usually try to think about what I'm speaking. And even if I'm looking at you, I might not be actually seeing you. So it takes practice all the time. The volume, the tone, the pitch, all of these are really very important to pay attention to. And again, the words make up only 7% of what you're saying. So if all of these put together, plus the words, then you're delivering a good rapport to the interviewer. So do not, obviously, if you run into a situation where you feel like, oh my God, this is a terrible interview, I'm doing such a terrible job, please remember that the interviewer does not see that most of the time. So sometimes you may make a mistake, but it might not even hit the interviewer's head. So don't underestimate yourself. Always, talk yourself to do better. don't like just expect the worst. There are many times where I thought I did so terrible, and then I get a call back, hey, we're expecting you, we want to do another interview. And there are times where I was like, I did amazing, right? And I never got a call back. Like, for example, at Amazon, I thought I did perfect, and I did not get another call back. So seems like I did something wrong, and I had to assess myself. Okay, what did I do wrong that they did not give me a call back? So I wanted to also give you guys a glimpse at my latest resume. So you guys would also have an idea. And that's probably another session to have, is how to make sure that you have a good resume. And I actually had this resume edited by a lot of folks who are really good at what they do. And don't, I say, sleep on your resume. Even if you're very comfortable at your job right now and you've been at it for a number of years, you know, things may change in an instant. If this pandemic has taught us one thing, it's definitely now the world is changing in rapidly, yani probably, you know, daily basis. So on the resume, just quickly, one thing that I learned is that you want to make sure that you're hitting benefits, how your work is doing, benefiting you, the company or the firm that you're working for. Most of the time, what I see folks do with their resume is pretty much write bullet points of their job description. Like, okay, that's great. I kind of see what you're doing, but please tell me more how your job or how you are helping the company do better. So for example, let me just give you an example. This is kind of like a job description, right? I'm leading development and product strategy for the next generation of mobile apps for Belmont internal and external applications. However, okay, what did I do that really helped the company? Integrating Azure DevOps to the company and introduce CI/CD automation pipelines, reducing mass hours of various staff to do manual deployments. Here is a direct benefit, right? Another company, maybe, for example, this one, when I was with HAP, I successfully implemented a web-based solution to reset all enterprise Oracle passwords from beginning to finish, saving DBAs time in manual tests. That's a lot of money. Or even, you know, mentioning dollar values are really good. Something that really grabs attention to folks. So make sure, you know, prior to obviously chasing the interviews, resume is more important. Probably that's where we should be doing webinars, but that's, again, another webinar to do, is focusing on resumes. What is the best resume? And what to write on your resume? What should you have first based on your experience or based on the number of experiences? So now I have another, you know, 10-15 minutes. I'll open it up to any questions. Please feel free, you know, to say whatever question you have or put it in the chat so we can answer it together. And inshallah, you guys found this helpful. Unmute and ask your questions.
Hey, Adil, this is Omar.
Tfadal.
So it's two questions. The first question is, you know, usually at the end, they'll ask you if you have any questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of things are, I guess, good question, or are they just trying to wrap up the interview by just asking that question? And then
no, that's actually an amazing question. And I actually have this. When I interviewed for DEF10, I had a good recruiter who prepped me a lot. And thank you for that, because this is very, very important. You must have a question. You cannot just say, no, I don't have any questions. If you say that, then pretty much you're telling them you're not interested in the job, right? So you got to have some questions prepared. It's best that you obviously paying attention in the interview and something caught your attention that they mentioned about the job that you want to ask them further about. For example, I see that you guys are using Amazon Stack. You know, what made you use Amazon Stack? Why not Azure, Microsoft Azure Stack? right? Or I see that you guys are really heavily involved in C++ programming. Have you ever considered other stacks like Java? Just to give them say, oh, this guy is actually definitely looking into expanding and thinking about other things. You can also ask them this question. This is an amazing question to tell them at the end is there any questions I didn't answer or you'd like me to clarify? Another question that I asked, for example, what main factors do you believe inspiring and highly effective instructors should have? This is obviously particular to my role as an instructor. I'm asking another instructor and I'm asking them even by name. I knew who they were. And then having them like, do you take training sessions? What would you prefer? Online or in person? Right? Adam, I think you're on you're mute. Yeah. So those are the questions that you have. Ask them, what is the most challenging part of your job? What would you prefer? Ask them about, what is most fulfilling? What do you like most about your job, or what do you like least? So make sure that you have 2 to 3 questions to ask them, depends on the time, obviously. But the best questions are the ones that come naturally through the interview.
Yeah, don't, if I may add that.
Yeah, go ahead, Ibrahim.
So I interview a lot of people, and I figured I'd call in case you guys have questions. Unfortunately, we don't have many people, so I'll try not to.
No, it's okay. But yeah, go ahead.
But we have people that ask questions for the sake of asking because they don't want to sound like what Adil said is they're not interested. So it's actually better not to, you could say, yeah, no, you've answered all my questions, because sometimes, the interviewers would give you a job description, they'll tell you stuff without you asking, and you'll say,
yeah,
I already answered it at the beginning. I had some questions about the job, activities. You bet one guy, we had this year that came in and just asked random questions that had nothing to do with the, with the interview. So it's obvious to us, like, so it doesn't help. It just looks like he's prepared,
definitely,
but he's not paying attention. So it's better not to ask them. But like Adil says, if you have something that's out of the interview, one of the best things, you could ask is, what's the top, if they haven't explained it, what's the number one skill you're looking for, or even better, what's the number one task you want to get done the next few months?
Yeah.
Your top, what is it? Because usually we don't say that. We don't tell you. We keep it generic. We don't want to tell people our secrets. But in the interview, you could say, what do you want me to do? Am I writing a spec for the next 2 months? By testing, it's not, just so you know, because maybe some people don't want to do testing. I have people that hate testing, but it's part of the job. So I don't want to hire somebody that doesn't like testing. Yep.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Definitely, you don't want to ask a question for the sake of asking. You want it to come as naturally as possible. I would say it's best definitely to ask a question. So hopefully you will have some question formulated. But again, if as Ibrahim said, if they answer definitely all of your questions, then please, do not ask random questions that will make you feel dumb. You
want to ask questions that make you decide whether you want this job or not, unless you already know you want it.
Absolutely.
But sometimes you don't know if you want it or not. So it's your chance to actually find that you're interviewing them too. They're interviewing you. You do the same. Right. Don't ask about salary or, stuff that.
For sure.
Or how many hours, is it a 40-hour job? I mean, it's like, come on, we're exempt.
Yeah. Well, I didn't cover those things because I feel like most of us already know those things not to ask.
You would be surprised.
Amazing.
Yeah, you're also on video. So we require people to be on video because we've had one guy that was, he had somebody else do the interview for him. That wasn't him. So we mandate the camera to be on.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I had one guy at Urban Science helping others, like during workday, he's helping others prepare for interviews. Now, I don't think he was doing the interviews for them, but I think the Indian Americans, they do this best.
Right.
They help each other like crazy.
Yeah,
And
he
they even go to the length of interviewing for others.
yeah, he was Indian. Yeah, he was Indian. That's
So,
so yeah.
you know, not to be
He was lip
يعني
syncing.
racist هنا بس
He was lip
صراحة
syncing.
I admire though their teamwork. They're definitely helping out each other. Now, whether it's moral and legal, that's another question, but their teamwork is unbelievable of how much they care about each other.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Welcome
So
questions.
Adil, just a follow-up question to the first one. How would you like you know, you ask your questions, you're pretty much done with the interview. How would you like close an interview, right? I think I struggle on that sometimes. Would you say, okay, thank you, talk to you later, or you know?
Well, tell them, you know, you could say, I would like to appreciate the time that you have given me to learn more about the role. And I hope that I have given you all of the questions that you were looking for. If there are any questions that you would like me to clarify or explain more, please let me know. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Obviously, most of the time they'll tell you about the next steps, and you just reply, you know, I look forward to that, or I'm very excited about this role. Seems like you guys are doing, you know, if they tell you about what they're doing. For example, we're working on the next مثلا battery design. You know, you say I'm very excited to learn more about that and hopefully work with you on that. So that tells them that you're very excited to work with them, that you're excited about the job, and at the same time that you're very confident as well. And if you end the interview and you feel like, damn it, you know, I should have mentioned something about a question that they asked me and I didn't do so well. It's okay to go up and write an email. You know, you wait 8 hours, I would say, until the next day, and do a follow-up email to, if you know their recruiter, or if you know actually the person that you interviewed with and their email. You know, you could say, you know, it struck me this question and I was even thinking about it more, and this is what I would think about the answer. And then you spell out your answer. That tells them you're very dedicated, that you are a person who is really want this role. So it's okay sometimes to mess up during the interview, but you know, that kind of follow-up is, now they make it, you know, customary. Interviewers or recruiters tells you to do it, but I would say do it with something to add as value. So you either tell them, you know, you're clarifying an answer, or even like, you know, I really enjoy talking about machine learning, if that's something that you're going to be doing. Here is a course or an article that I really enjoyed and I would like to share with you. As simple as that. I don't know if anybody else has any other tips about Omar's question.
Yeah, yeah. So just a quick comment. You just to keep it, you know, simple. If you don't have anything to add at the end, you know, just say, you know, thank you for taking the time to interview me. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you say. And then if you have something to follow up, you might want to do it, you know, within the next, you know, hour, because every company that I know has a, you know, the interview is really pretty much your chance to make it or break it.
Yeah, to make an impression.
So we have a rating. We have to score each question out of 10 or 4 or 5 because of fairness laws, right? If you interview multiple people, we have to put a score to HR. We send the results to HR and say we pick, you know, person A versus B. Right? There's a score. Usually the highest one gets the job, even if it's even if their resume looks bad and they ace the interview, they get the job. If you have a great resume and you can't really back it up with in the interview, then yeah, you don't, you know, it's not a good sign. What was the other question? I think there was 2 points.
No, that was
the other one.
Question: how do you close the interview? And
you had mentioned something, Adil, but I had.
Omar, did you have another question? Ibrahim, go ahead also. The other Ibrahim. Oh,
I have questions though.
تفضل Adam.
Can you ask for the contact, like emails or something?
Say that again.
Can you ask for the contact information?
I would hesitate to do that. So usually, and Ibrahim can obviously
Right.
add to this.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It's you interview a lot of people, and you would not want to, unless they're already in direct, you were sent the invite and you see the other person's contact information, then it's already with you, right? But I would not ask that during the interview. I think that's kind of overstepping, right, Ibrahim?
It's weird because what would you want from me after the interview? You had your chance. I mean, unless the only thing people do is, they don't like the job offer and they want to negotiate, but
that's later on.
Yeah, you could talk to the HR person and say, I want to get in touch with the supervisor, and he'll give you the email address for negotiation purposes. But usually HR will keep it when they offer you the offer, they will copy us, and then you could reply to all. It's don't negotiate by phone. It's better to put notes down and the reasons why you want to negotiate. And if you have, one guy had gotten his salary from the previous job, and attached it said, okay, well, here's what I'm making, you offer me less in a nice way, and you give reasons why. But the other one is you want the email in case you decide to start later on, so you want to move your start date to maybe January or February for some reason. It's good to say, yeah, okay, so, because HR will come to us anyway and say, hey, is it okay? We say, yeah, sure, they can start a month later instead of 2 weeks. Yeah. But other than that, what would there's no reason to contact the supervisor.
Yeah. And again, usually people who interview, they interview so many other people, and I interviewed a lot at Beaumont, and I haven't had somebody like contact me directly. And it would come off as weird, صراحة. If an interviewee would contact me without me knowing that they have their contact, or ask me for my contact information, it would be kind of odd. But yeah, just to keep that in mind, that you don't do that until you have an offer, or that contact information is given to you through the communication with the recruiter. Any other questions? Final question, guys?
One more question. I get many interviews from DTE and General Motors and Ford, but I never get offered. Is there anything I need to work on, like my resume or?
You said you already interviewed at those 3 companies, but no offers?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it could be multiple factors, resume, experience, the interview itself. So yeah, definitely you want to do a lot of prep. So I'm more than happy to dedicate some time for you to do one-on-one. I did that with a brother who actually just received an offer from Ford. So I'm really excited for him since he actually graduated a year and a half ago.
And that's good.
Yeah, this is a hot market, guys. So, you have now the employees have the upper hand in negotiating and getting better offers. So, take advantage before, things may change in the near future. So Adam, just you have my numbers, just message me, and inshallah we'll set something up later this week.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah, there's something on Google. I don't know if I don't have it in front of me, but this helped me, 5, 10, 15 years ago. I've always done it. Just Google it. It's called 100 toughest questions for interviews. And basically it will give you all kinds of imaginable, just like the ones Adil listed in the first slide or second, the things they ask you, which is circumstantial, tough questions. I mean, if you can do 100, it takes a while to practice. The 100, it's on Google. Maybe I'll try to find it and send it. They give you examples too. So the question and then what you could say, but I mean, as an example, but that's not what you're going to say. It's just to explain how to answer it based on your situation, depending on the job. If you know all these 100, if you're, you can answer any question, that any company would ask you. You know, what, like the one day, did you disagree with the supervisor? Do you have any weaknesses? You know, there's no reason why those wouldn't be asked by anybody. In fact, we focus on those the most, right? Because those show whether you're willing to learn any job. We don't expect you to come and do the bare minimum, right? We want somebody that comes in and is willing to just get the job done no matter what. Learn, you know, work extra hours, teach himself. So those circumstantial questions, except for software, right? They got to test you in software, but most of the other jobs, we focus on the behavioral and character of the person more. So yeah, look, just Google toughest interview questions and practice those.
Yeah.
And thank you, Omar.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
One last question, one
Yeah,
last step. If you don't know the answer, then just say, I don't know. Don't try to fake the answer.
Yeah.
If you don't know, just say, I don't know, but I'm capable to learn. Or
however, I with one caveat. So sometimes they ask you those, what do they call them? Brain teaser questions. But they want to know how you're able to do problem solving. So actually, I interviewed that urban science firm manager position, and the interviewer asked me, how many eggs do you think are being consumed in New York City? So like the question is totally out of the job description, right? And I was like, you know, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I'd like to know more inputs. You know, you got to tell me more information about this. I think this is incomplete. But actually what he was looking for is for me to say, okay, this is how many estimates of people in New York City. This is how many people are, you know, most likely like eggs. The 7 days of the week, maybe 2 days of the week, you know, and you start explaining the problem that way. However, you know, there are some questions where they ask you, for example, do you know how to do a join statement in SQL? You don't just start, you know, trying to BS some answer. But, you know, you got to know the difference between, you know, brain teaser question that usually even Google asks these kind of questions, and questions like straight up, you know, questions that you either know the answer or not. But good point, Linda.
Yeah, if you don't know the answer, explain the process basically.
Yeah.
How to solve it, which is more important than the
All
answer.
right.
So,
Well, thank you everybody for attending. I know it was a small number, but this will be recorded. So for those who missed it, inshallah, I'll have it ready for them to be viewed somewhere on YouTube, having it, what is it called? Unlisted, so they can click on the video and see it. So Jazakumullah khair. I know Abdul Nasser left and he left a message there. You're welcome, Abdul Nasser. It's my pleasure. You know, I've thought about this for a long time, and I thought, you know, this would be very beneficial, and I hope that you guys found it beneficial. So thank you, everybody, and inshallah, we'll see you soon.
yep. Thanks, Adil.
Masalam. Mother, I'll call you. Masalam.